What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another market update. As usual, let's get straight to the charts. So as you can see, we've been ranging here for the past couple of months or so. So the question now is, are we gonna have another breakdown like some of these previous times over here? Or is Bitcoin going to do something different now? So I'm gonna try my best to find the answer here. First of all, let's look at the current structure. As you can see, we have been building this uptrend over here. So there are different ways of drawing the line. You can draw it like this or like this. But generally speaking, the structure has been very, very similar to what we were doing in the previous range. So the question is, are we in this phase now? My answer is simply the trend is your friend, and so far the trend is a clear downtrend. But at the same time, when looking at the short-term trend here, we have not broken below this line over here. So as long as we stay above this line, things are still bullish. We do have some upside targets. We could go even higher. High 70s would be possible, for example. But obviously the more important question is what happens after that, because we do have significant resistance the higher we actually go over here. Right now it almost looks too perfect. As you can see, you can draw a line over here, and then also for the previous range, and we did pretty much exactly the same thing. We had some sort of rising wedge here with a small fake out above it, and then we broke down. So we're gonna have to see whether this is gonna be the case this time as well. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if we did break down next or after some sort of secondary fake out, because this is just the most typical structure you see in a bear market. Very, very aggressive downtrends that happen within a couple of days, and then these long consolidation periods that often build either bear flags or rising wedges, depending on how you want to call them. So how long will this misery continue? Are we just gonna continue having these massive flush downs followed by these rising wedges forever? Obviously not. I do believe that the vast majority of the bear market is already behind us. Now, just to be clear, when I say the vast majority of the bear market, I mean the magnitude of the dump, not the duration itself, because as we all know, this dump has already been pretty much front loaded at this point. At best, if we're still going to respect the bottom power law support, we could have like one major drop left here. So we could actually be in this phase of the market cycle right now. Even when looking at the PLF chart and assuming that we're going to get some sort of wick below that bottom power law support, the worst case scenario would still be something like $40,000. And obviously the drop from 126,000 to 60,000 was more than a 50% drop, whereas a drop from 60,000 to 40,000, that would only be a 33% drop or so. So at this point, we have to see how Bitcoin will decide to kill all this time, because we're still in the beginning of the year, technically speaking. Obviously, this is all assuming that we are gonna retest those lower power law levels. When there's a will, there's a way. We could first drop a little bit, then build some sort of double top again, and then have some sort of very, very, very prolonged bottoming process. That is always possible. Maybe we could even have some sort of larger rally and then come back down. Who knows? Of course, this is assuming that the trend of 1-year bear markets will continue this time as well. Even though I am cautious here, I'm still buying Bitcoin like crazy with every cent that I have available. So why is that? There's a big difference between longing here and accumulating a long-term position, because when looking at this from a macro perspective, we are getting insane value right now, and you're just being greedy if you're waiting for those perfect bottom levels, because you may never get those levels. And the risk to reward ratio is really not worth it, in my opinion, than trying to buy everything at the perfect bottom. Now, I was being a bit hyperbolic because I do have some cash reserves available just for that moment when we have that once in a market cycle opportunity to buy extremely undervalued Bitcoin. Let's look at our other charts and indicators as well, starting with the CME chart. We still have that gap at $80,000 or so. Are we going to fill it? Who knows? It is theoretically possible because in the previous bear markets, we have had rallies that have gone so high. So it is possible. It is just this bear market that has been special so far, if you know what I mean. The dollar is having a little bit of a pump. We have actually even taken out this previous high here. So we're gonna have to see whether this will continue. But obviously right now, both the pump in the dollar and in Bitcoin are coinciding in the short term. The unemployment rate is moving higher again, but we're still well below the danger zone. The federal funds rate is dropping as well, and we can already see some differences between this cutting cycle and some of the previous ones. The main difference would be how slow this cutting cycle has been so far. It has been very methodical, as you can see. Next, let's get to the precious metals, and oh boy, am I glad that I sold all of my precious metals. You can see how brutally gold has dumped so far. This is pretty devastating considering that this is supposed to be a stable asset. Supposedly, this was the biggest drop since 1983, so yeah. Silver is looking equally as disgusting. I correctly believe that this was just a blow off top followed by a complacency phase, and now we're possibly breaking down to new lows. I kept telling you guys that Bitcoin was incredibly undervalued in terms of gold, and it would only be a matter of time when Bitcoin would pump to the upside again in terms of gold. Obviously, we are still in a bear market and Bitcoin can drop a lot faster than gold, so it is still possible to get some really juicy opportunities. Let's have a quick look at some news as well. So we have some very good news. BTQ Technologies announces first deployment of BIP 360 on Bitcoin Quantum Testnet version 0.30. So the new Bitcoin Quantum Testnet delivers the first functional implementation of Bitcoin Improvement Proposal 360. The quantum-resistant output type merged into Bitcoin's official BIP repository earlier this year, while Bitcoin Core has made no progress toward implementation. BTQ expects to operate a Bitcoin quantum mining pool with a 3% fee on all block rewards and projects accumulation of approximately 100,000 BTQ tokens in the first 12 months of network operation. You guys won't believe how much quantum fear-mongering I've been getting lately. So the narrative this cycle why Bitcoin is dead and has no future is because of the impending threat from quantum computing. The comment sections of my videos almost always have questions about this, and my stance has always been the same. I believe that when the time comes, Bitcoin will be upgraded to a quantum resistant protocol. There's no choice because people won't willingly just let their entire life savings disappear. We know how difficult it is to upgrade Bitcoin because it is extremely challenging to find consensus among all Bitcoiners. But when push comes to shove and when everybody's life savings are on the line, people will make the right decision. All right, back to the charts. So interest in Bitcoin has obviously been declining. We are in a bear market. The interesting thing about this cycle is that interest was never really high to begin with. We've just been oscillating around here. And where could we bottom out? In the previous cycles, we have kind of bottomed out at levels very close to the current level, so we're going to have to see about that. When looking at the moving averages, you can see that we did recently have our 3-day death cross, which has never been good news in the short term, but those death crosses have always obviously resulted in some really good buying opportunities in the medium term. So how can we benefit from this situation as Bitcoiners? Well, obviously just keep buying, not financial advice, but right now is a really good time to accumulate your long-term hodl positions. Don't do any degenerate stuff because further downside is very much possible. So if we do keep dropping, just buy some more instead of using high leverage or anything. Now, if you're strapped for cash, which let's be real is very common among Bitcoiners, you do have the opportunity to open a very small leverage long position once we get even better prices than now. because I wouldn't advise opening it over here. I did open a long position a while ago and then close it at a profit here because I was thinking about potentially creating some sort of ladder. But right now I do want to get a slightly better entry price if I'm actually going to be using leverage. So if you wake up one day and discover that Bitcoin is at $50,000 or something, and you have no cash available to buy the dip because you already bought the dip and you bought the dip of the dip and the dip of the dip, then you could put a couple $1,000s worth of Bitcoin on an exchange and use like 1x leverage with a liquidation price of $25,000 to make up for the fact that you didn't have any available cash. And of course, there's nothing wrong with just hodling either. But if you are going to use leverage, then it's just important to be very conservative with your risk management so you can survive market cycle after market cycle. I feel like I have to say this again, but obviously none of this is financial advice. You do you. Anyway, I'm off. See you soon, guys.